I get inspired by things that are made out of necessity but are beautiful. So things that are found and are turned around and become something else, something that they weren't intended to be, but they solve a problem in a beautiful way, in an interesting way. I'm Carlos Vides of Studio El Leon, and we are here in Sierra Madre, California, in my new studio. I am a multidisciplinary artist, designer, and I've been doing this for 15 years, but just recently started getting into designing and making my own artwork and pieces. I grew up in the Inland Empire, just drawing and loving math and science and technical, fields. Didn't really get into design until later in life. Ended up going to art center, studying environmental design, graduated and got into interior architecture, and then got into more of environmental spatial fields. A spatial designer is somebody that designs layouts and understands space, but also brings the vibe to the space. The goal is to use my years of education and design knowledge to translate that into something that is also beautiful. It's not something that I find aesthetically pleasing too. I'm a bit of a hoarder. I find a lot of things and I keep them. I don't know what they're for, but the goal is that, when I'm tinkering at something, I'll see it from the corner of my eye and I'll remember, oh yeah, I have that, that hubcap that I found. Like, what can I use that for? And but I also like making stuff. I love from plywood just because it's such a simple material, and it's just straight. It's square. I can see it. That material, it's just simple and what's the word? Humble, I guess. Yeah. I could use a computer to 3D model it, have it all set, send it to CNC, and then put it together here. I think that's when I try not to cut the main pieces myself, because I'm trying to keep the studio still relatively clean. I want people to come and enjoy it, and I don't want it to turn into a shop. So I don't have like a table saw. I have some tools. I have like some saws and things that I can use to finesse, if something goes wrong. But most of the cuts I try to outsource and then have them and then bring them here for assembly, finishing, which is a big part. So I try to do all the sanding outside and try to keep. I think the goal is to keep the studio as clean as possible, dust-free as possible. My computer's in here, so I want to, try to make sure it doesn't get too dusty in here. If the idea is right, you can actually make it into something special. The motivation for this studio came through necessity. I needed somewhere to store Mueble Total, which is a piece I created in 2025 for LA Design Weekend. And I showed it at a gallery, and then it ended up at another gallery for 2 months. But at the end of that run, it had to go somewhere, and I had no idea where. I hadn't thought through it that far. So the first thing that came to mind was to get a storage unit and just, leave it there and maybe, bring it back out later. But that seemed a little sad, to be honest, just to like put it away and not have any eyes on it, and not be able to use it for what it was made for. So then little by little I started thinking of having a studio space, putting it into a studio, renting a space that I could store it and use it as it was meant to be used. And then I also just started thinking, it would be cool to also build stuff there. So I started looking at industrial spaces online. Found a lot of commercial places that were very just industrial and cold, to be honest. And I stumbled upon this place in Sierra Madre, which is not far from where I live, 15 minutes from Pasadena. And I loved it. It had the ivy growing on the outside. It had windows, had a skylight. It was a blank slate, just white walls with concrete. And I came to see it, and I think the first thing when you start looking at studio spaces is the price. I definitely took that into account, knowing that this was a big step, I guess, to have another rent, basically. So I thought about it, and it just started making more and more sense. The more I thought about it, I could work here, I could continue doing my design work, my freelance design work from the desk, and I can host events. I can make stuff. I can just honestly just keep myself entertained with materials, and with just being able to mess around and create things that no one asked for, to be honest. Yeah, so what pays the bills is my freelance design work, which is a lot of spatial design or design direction, creative direction, for a lot for experiences and for spaces. So designing pop-ups, designing stores, a lot of fun stuff, for big companies too, and for TV and for film too, like premieres. So it's fun. I just it's what I love doing it, and that's really why I'm able to have this, is because I've been doing that for 10 years now. So but I love also having the second half of this space is where I get to make stuff, and where I get to take a break from doing that and walk over and cut a piece of wood and glue it to another piece of wood, and have an idea and sketch on the chalkboard. So that's the other half. But definitely I couldn't do it without the work that I do in spatial design as a freelancer. If I feel inspired to do something, I go hard, and and I could finish a whole project in one day. Or sometimes I just want to sit on the couch and turn on the projector and watch a movie, and that way be inspired too. So, or have some drinks and hang out. Invite people over. I love to, I love to show it off. I love having people over. I love people to see what I'm working on. I love input, and we can talk about what they think about what I'm working on, and I think it's a social space, definitely. I think everything I design is always, the social aspect is always there. I'm always thinking, how can I get people to talk to each other and share a little more and feel comfortable in this space. I'm Carlos Vides, and we're in Studio Leon.